Millionaire catches his black daughter being humiliated in her own store. The boutique Blackwell's Jewels was much more than just a luxury business. It represented the culmination of a vision, that of Nathaniel Blackwell, a man whose career had been built on years of hard work and meticulous strategy. Nestled in a chic neighborhood where the city's social elite strolled between the cobblestone streets and refined cafes, the store shone like a beacon in the night, a symbol of success and prestige. The sparkling windows caught the sunlight, casting shards of diamonds and sapphires onto the street, while the interior of the boutique exuded opulence and perfection. The glass shelves were arranged with almost scientific precision, each jewel posing in its own light, with lighting directed to enhance each facet, each engraving. The dim lighting created a cozy, almost secret atmosphere, where customers felt invited to enter another world, a world where time seemed suspended and everything seemed within their reach. But behind this perfect setting, carefully arranged and designed to impress, hid a much more complex story, a tale woven of silent struggles, invisible challenges and invisible but omnipresent power relations. Amara Blackwell, Nathaniel's only daughter, was born into this world of luxury and privilege. Since her childhood, she had been surrounded by the biggest brands, exceptional pieces, exclusive events and high-level conversations. But contrary to what many might have thought, she was not blinded by this pomp. On the contrary, Amara had learned to look beyond appearances, to understand that this luxury often hid sacrifices, compromises and invisible struggles. She never wanted to just be an heiress. What she was looking for, what she had always wanted, was a deserved place in this world that she knew so well but that she constantly had to prove that she deserved. Although her father was a respected man in the business world, known for his charisma and his ability to impose himself in any room, Amara knew that being a black woman, in a world dominated by influential white men, placed her in a much more precarious position than that of her father. If Nathaniel was an authority figure in this world, she, Amara, was often seen as nothing more than the daughter of a simple heiress without merit of her own. Behind the scenes of the store, when she was not in meetings with her father or in her strategic relationships, she always had to fight against this furtive glance, this attitude of condescension from customers and partners who underestimated her simply because of her skin color. She had learned to defend herself at a young age. She knew that her qualifications, her expertise, and her degrees were never enough for some. She always had to do more, work more, pushing yourself again and again, just to be seen as legitimate. In some circles, even its presence in this area, that of luxury jewelry, seemed like an anomaly, an insult to the historic power of the city's traditional white families. Customers frequented Blackwell's Jewels not only for its refined creations, but also for the relationships they could form with high society. However, even in the midst of these mundane interactions, Amara knew that behind the customers' smiles often hid thoughts and judgments that she needed to decipher in order to successfully navigate this world. It was a cold winter afternoon, and the dim lights of the store cast soft shadows on the shelves full of sparkling jewelry. Amara sat behind her desk, reviewing sales reports and proposals for new designs for the next collection. She was concentrating, a cup of hot coffee next to her, when the door to the shop suddenly opened. She looked up and saw a man entering the room with an imposing presence. It was Monsieur Laurent, an influential and respected businessman, known for his investments in prestigious companies. He stood there, tall and authoritative, with a calculating look, but an obvious coldness peeking through his smile. On the outside, he seemed like a charming man, all in appearance, but in his eyes, Amara knew there was more than that. Laurent was not simply a figure of power. He was a condescending man, and although his reputation preceded him, he was also not unknown for his racist and inappropriate behavior. He approached her without a glance at his surroundings, scanning the jewelry disdainfully, his hands brushing over the pieces as if he were in a museum. When he walked towards the counter, he glanced at Amara. His eyes rested on her for a moment, but he didn't seem to recognize her as the owner of the shop. On the contrary, he seemed to regard her as a simple employee. "Are you the manager of this store?" he asked in a dry tone, barely a greeting. His gaze swept around the room, as if looking for something to criticize, something that was wrong. Amara looked up, her professional smile settling into a mask of calm. She was used to this kind of attitude, But that didn't mean she tolerated it.
Yes, sir. I am Amara Blackwell.
How can I help you today? The client stared at her, his eyes focusing on her dark features, as if he had just discovered an anomaly in a well-ordered world. He lingered on her carefully styled hair, on her eyes full of determination, on the color of her skin which almost seemed to bother him, like a break in the perfect picture he had constructed for himself. It's quite surprising. I thought Blackwell's was run by your father. But you're his daughter, aren't you? The question was not mere curiosity, but disguised judgment. His words were loaded with innuendo, as if he expected that the only reality that upset him in this luxury boutique would be precisely the fact that Amara was there. Amara, who had often had to deal with this kind of innuendo, this look that lingers on her a little too long, this persistent feeling of being observed as a stranger in a world that was not supposed to be hers, remained Olympian calm. She wasn't here to explain her legitimacy to this kind of person. Not today. Indeed, I am his daughter, and I am also the manager here, she replied in a measured tone, smoothing out the invisible wrinkles of tension that were building inside her. Each word was an affirmation of her position, a way of regaining control of a situation that, with a single glance, tried to reduce her to the invisible. Monsieur Laurent burst out laughing, a laugh that seemed more like an attempt to reassure himself than a truly joyful reaction.
This laughter echoed through the shop, hitting there with a certain brutality, like a deliberate affront. Ah, so it's you, the famous Eris.
I must say, I always believed that affairs of this kind were reserved for people more suited to this environment. He insisted on the word adapted, emphasizing it with an almost palpable condescension, as if he had just revealed a universal truth that no one dared to say out loud. Customers in the store began to notice the interaction, their gazes slowly turning towards Amara. Some pretended not to have heard, looking down at their purchases or pretending to be interested in a window. But others, more observant, exchanged furtive glances. A slight unease settled in the air, as if the balance of the luxurious space was about to break. But Amara, with her experience facing such looks, did not let it affect her. She had seen this scene play out dozens of times in her head. These discreet insinuations, these barely veiled barbs which meant you don't belong here, were Amara's daily life. But each time, she resisted. Each time, she faced the impossibility of hiding behind shame or anger. I assure you, Mr. Laurent, that my place here has nothing to do with my skin color, but rather with my work. If you are interested in our collections, I would be delighted to advise you. His voice remained calm, almost gentle, but there was a firmness in the way he responded that left no room for doubt. She was not there to play the role of a self-effacing employee, nor to justify her presence here. She was the manager, and she had every right to be. The customer, visibly irritated by what he perceived as resistance, raised his hand, as if the social etiquette of a man of his status gave him the right to silence a simple saleswoman. I don't need advice from you. From a black woman trying to pass herself off as someone of that caliber. His words, sharp and cruel, slid like invisible blades through space, driving a deeper wedge between him and Amara. Believe me, you should be somewhere other than this store, he said, looking certain of his superiority. He had reached the point of no return, turning the jewelry store into a battleground where Amara's dignity became the stakes. The humiliation was public. The gaze of the other customers, initially indifferent, was now turned towards the scene. Some whispered among themselves, others remained silent, some exchanged embarrassed smiles. But no one dared to intervene. Amara could feel this silent complicity, this tacit acceptance of injustice in the air. These men, these women who came to buy jewelry, objects of undeniable beauty, also seemed ready to accept the contempt of a man like Laurent. Perhaps they felt incapable of challenging an influential client, or perhaps they themselves were prisoners of the power relations at play. But Amara, clenching her fists under the counter, remained calm. She knew that letting herself be carried away by anger, or even frustration, would be a victory for this man. She wouldn't give him that pleasure. She stood up, crossing her arms with a confident gesture, and replied in a firm but still gentle voice. I ask you to respect this store and those who work there, Mr. Laurent. If you have a problem with me, I suggest you leave us. The customer sneered, his anger clear in his expression. I don't have to respect a store run by people like you. Besides, I'm going to call your father and tell him how many times you have insulted me with your attitude. He shrugged, almost satisfied with his own threat, and moved to take out his phone. But before he could make a move, the door burst open, causing the entrance bells to jingle. Nathaniel Blackwell entered the store, his expensive coat floating behind him like a towering shadow. As soon as he crossed the threshold, he felt the tense atmosphere. The whispers had died down, but there was no ambiguity in the look Amara gave him. He needed no explanation. He had heard the rumors of the scene that had been taking place for a few minutes. His gaze darkened when he saw the expression on his daughter's face. His usually impassive features hardened. She didn't need to say a word to him for him to understand what had just happened. The situation was already far too clear. Mr. Laurent, Nathaniel said in a calm but firm voice, a quiet authority that was immediately evident. I'm asking you to leave this store. Now. The customer, who had frozen for a moment upon hearing Nathaniel's deep voice, slowly turned his head towards him. At first surprised, he ended up displaying a satisfied smile, as if the situation had just taken a turn that he had anticipated. Ah, Blackwell, he replied, bowing slightly, sarcastically. Here's the real boss, finally. I was hoping you'd show up. You should have a serious talk with your daughter, and explain to her that she doesn't really belong here. This kind of place isn't made for people like her.
De tensión Rosianach.
Nathaniel's voice became more forceful. My company is not a place where my employees are humiliated, Mr. Laurent, and especially not my daughter. Amara is here not only because she is competent, but because she is worthy of her place. She does not need you to teach her anything about her place in this world. She is here because of her work, her intelligence, and her ability to lead. She will inherit what I have built, not because I am her father, but because she deserves it. You are dealing with an exceptional woman, and you would do well to understand that. The customer, a little unsettled, seemed to hesitate. His cheeks swelled with indignation, but Nathaniel was not intimidated. I will offer you one last chance to leave this place with dignity. If you refuse, rest assured that your associates will soon learn of your unacceptable behavior. His voice was low, but each word carried weight.
Nathaniel Blackwell never made empty threats.
He was a man of action, and his influence was vast. Laurent, still visibly upset, tried to respond, but the words got stuck in his throat. He knew very well that Nathaniel was not the type to argue when he was in the right. After a tense silence, Laurent abruptly turned on his heel, his face marked by defeat. That's it, Blackwell, he spat as he walked away, his footsteps echoing heavily on the marble floor.
You will get what you deserve.
When the door closed behind him, a relative calm settled over the shop. The murmur of the incident gradually died away, but the impact was still present, hanging in the air. Amara, still standing behind her counter, observed her father. She felt a weight in her chest, her heart beating harder than usual. She had not let her emotions show in front of Laurent, but now the anger, frustration and sadness seemed to want to overflow. For a moment, she thought she might break down, but her father, as always, was there, in silence. Nathaniel approached her, his gaze softening. I'm sorry you had to deal with this, girl. But I want you to know something. You have more power than you think. His father's words, although gentle, had a profound impact. Amara looked down for a moment, then a slight smile, sad but sincere, appeared on her lips. I'm tired of having to prove my worth all the time. Tired of being judged, of having to be stronger, more competent than others just to be accepted. Nathaniel observed his daughter with a tenderness that she did not always perceive. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture full of comfort.
That's what you're ready for.
Because you know what it's like to fight. And you know that the only validation that matters is your own. You don't need the acceptance of others to succeed, Amara. All you need to do is stay true to yourself. And you already have what it takes to succeed. Amara raised her head, a small glint of determination in her eyes. The tear she had let escape dried quickly. I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And I'm going to do it my way, by taking over this store. I'll do what they thought was impossible, but I'll do it my way. Thanks, Dad. Nathaniel's words, while encouraging, were not simply fatherly support. They were a powerful reminder of the dignity and resilience that Amara carried within her. In this world where judgments were rushed and opportunities often closed to ambitious black women, she now knew that her own worth was not measured by the expectations of others, but by her ability to advance, to resist and to prove her undeniable talent. Under the caring gaze of her father, Amara understood that true power lay in the assurance of her choices, the conviction in her actions and the quiet strength she could deploy in the face of those who sought to silence her. She was not there to play an imposed role. She was there to create her own path. And she was more than ready to do it.